Yo, what's up guys, hope you guys are doing good. So today we are going to see what if Daimyos helped Uzumaki clan when they are attacked part 1. Hope you will enjoy this video, so before we start please like the video and subscribe to our channel and hit bell notification, it motivates me to upload more fanfics for my lovely audience. So let's get started. The Daimyo is a ruler of one of the 5 great nations, like a king, and this tradition has been carried down for generations. The earliest example of a daimyo is Tenji, a ruler of the land of Ko, in present-time Kaminari no Kuni. Tenji had a concubine named Otsutsuki Kagaya, an extraterrestrial pseudo-deity from a distant world from that of the great nations. They had a set of twins together, even though they ended up falling out, resulting in an annihilation of the whole world in the form of Mugen Tsukuyomi, a genjutsu of the Rinne Sharingan designed to trap its victims in a never-ending loop of dreams that reflect their desires, siphoning their chakra via Shinju, a tree the Otsutsuki concubine had followed to get to the elemental nations, and turned them into mindless slaves with zero interest in individuality whatsoever. Thus, the world was restarted, just like it ended, on a whim, automatically making Kagaya a daimyo by default. Her 2 sons, Hagoromo and Hamura, had little to no understanding as to why their mother felt the need to make slaves out of people, and instead duked it out with their mom. Hagoromo with his own unique purple Rinne Sharingan and Hamura with his Tenseigan after his subsequent death and revival by his elder brother. Years after the inevitable defeat and sealing of the Shinju and Kagaya, the 2 brothers split, not before raising each other's families in love, as opposed to Kagaya's opinion of power being the best option. With that said, Hamura left one of his sons in the care of his elder brother before leaving for the moon, leading to the formation of the Hyuga clan. As for Hagoromo, he helped rebuild the scarred world, sharing his beliefs of a peaceful world with understanding of the greater good with Ninshu, the shinobi creed which he ended up getting glorified as the Rakudo Senin for. Spiritual connections with yourself and those around you to help this world to see unification as a means to peace, that is Ninshu. Or that is, what he planned, but he gradually learned that such a creed took longer to achieve. In his case, it seemed impossible. Nevertheless, with him being the first custodian of Ninshu and the first and only master at the time, he, in turn, was the first daimyo of a unified elemental nations, surpassing his own father Tenji and his co-predecessors. He had 2 sons, before his wife's passing, Otsutsuki Indra and Otsutsuki Ashura. Indra, the older of the 2, have superb insight into the teachings of Ninshu and a knack for turning his insight into reality. In a nutshell, he was a genius. Armed with brains and his father's keen eyes, he was the wind of change that Ninshu had the privilege of dwelling on, in terms of what ninja of a later day and age call ninjutsu. Forming what he called seals, with his hands, he could call upon abilities charged with his chakra. These abilities were called jutsu, and were based on 5 elements, being the most basic yet most abundant in the world and most attuned to the nature of their world: Mizu, Kaminari, Tsuchi, Keizen Hai. These hand seals, 12 in total, were attuned to these elements with certain patterns being displayed to call upon a certain jutsu at any given moment, propelled by a certain amount of chakra. As expected, the breakthrough was awe-inspiring for the other followers of Ninshu, but this worried Hagoromo and in turn, put his younger son in a very precarious position. Ashura was, for a lack of more precise explanations, the complete opposite of Indra. Brash, impatient and slow on the learning intake, he was considered a dunce and was always frowned upon by the followers of Ninshu due to his capacity as a son of their master, and was ridiculed at times for not meeting their expectations as an Otsutsuki heir. That would put most people down. For him, it didn't matter that he wasn't as talented as his Ni-san, as he affectionately calls Indra. In fact, he was glad that he had room to learn, because that meant more time with his brother in training and just being a kid. Always dozing off when reading his father's various journals on Ninshu and showing off his clumsiness and recklessness during training, he was as free-spirited as they could be, and it was perfectly okay with it. Until eventually everything changed and he had to deal with a monster that planned to destroy everything for the sake of peace and order. Yes, the eventual descent of Indra into darkness. As it came to a point where Hagoromo had to choose a successor to his way of life, he sent his sons to faraway villages on a quest to figure out how they could help out with the situation the villagers were plagued with. The fine detail in that was that the solution was supposed to be long-term and peaceful. The brothers returned, one returning a few months later and the other, almost a year after. After a short summary of the steps taken from his sons to reach a solution and a brief but powerful intervention from the first Toad Sage, Gamamaru, Hagoromo made a decision. Ashura was chosen. Unexpectedly, Ashura asked his father to rescind his decision and hand it over to Indra, but he refused, not even letting up on the matter. His reason: Indra let the villagers depend on him, instead of encouraging them to work together with him, resulting in a civil war in the village that devastated them days later. That same night, Indra attacked his father's headquarters, demanding his reasons as to why he chose a dunce over a powerful man like him. His answer was a band of people who unified against him, Ashura included, to defeat him. As much as he tried to decimate them with his Mangekyo Sharingan, a dojutsu he gained by killing his two best friends, he was defeated in one of the brothers' ever galactic clashes because his younger brother, the dunce that clung to his Ni-san, had inherited his father's Rakudo Sennin powers, a package of powers he thought he would be the one to attain, further infuriating him. After running away to lick his wounds for several decades, he came back, a few days before his father's passing, to further reinforce his point of view, that power will prevail, for one has to reign in their power to instill stability and create peace. Vowing to kill his brother and followers, he left. On the day of Hagoromo's passing, Ashura told his father that he would shower the love, for it is with understanding each other as people can they work around their strengths to reach a greater goal, and the most crucial part of it is to love your fellow people. With that said, Hagoromo took his final breath and left the corporeal plane, leaving Ashura as the leader of Ninshu, the Hagoromo, Uzumaki and Senju clans and the Daimyo of the unified world, or what was left for him to rule. Allies to Ninshu and these clans that Ashura was the progenitor of indirectly included Nara, Akamichi, Yamanaka and so on. Indra, on the other hand, created a sector of Ninshu that was governed on standards of reinforcement using power as the glue to prolonged stability. With the Uchiha, Kagaya, Yuki, and Shinoike clans as descendants and allied with Yatsuki, Shimura, Hazuka and other clans before the Great Warring Clans era, where the prominence of the Uchiha and Senju shone throughout history as the deadliest of the warring clans, with powerhouses such as Uchiha Madara, Uchiha Izuna, Senju Hashirama, Senju Tobarama and so forth. Two clans that never went to war during this period were the Hyuga and Uzumaki clans. Situated near the High Kaminari border and Uzushiogakure no Sato in Uzu no Kuni, off the coast of Mizu no Kuni respectively, they had their own battles to win. The Hyuga clan believed themselves to be of celestial blood and held themselves in such regard. Technically, they were not off the mark. Descendants of Otsutsuki Hamura, they have the distinct pupil-less, white eyes of the Otsutsuki, the Byakugan, at their disposal and is their most important feature when identifying them. The very first Hyuga, Otsutsuki Hideki, had been left under Hagoromo's care by Hamura, his father, when the former had to go to the newly created, at the time, moon, which happened to be a giant seal performed by the twins, who would be later known as Chibaku Tensei. Hideki was supposed to be an ambassador to the shinobi that his father would later groom on the moon, and was left with an unsaid task of building his own family, so his brothers, Akira and Tenji, named after his grandfather, descendants, who kept the Otsutsuki name, could connect together. As is the case, Hideki agreed with his uncle about the principle of understanding each other as a means to attain peace, but figured that one should be powerful enough to protect such peace and should go through their fair share of sacrifices to achieve that. Hence, the only way he could do that was to isolate his family from the outside world, selecting a few to re-educate their brethren about the happenings outside of the estate he built, and applying that knowledge to his own interpretation of Ninshu and his father's own brand of teachings from the moon. The result: a systematic way of life that relies on grooming one's own with one key element, never leaking any of the information to the outside world. Thus, the concept of Haijutsu was born and more clans decided to be secretive with their own renditions of Ninshu, from which ninjutsu was derived, via Indra. The same could be said for the Uzumaki clan. The most distinguished clan descended from Ashura, the Uzumaki inherited high chakra capacity and density from him, and were the only clan from this branch of the Otsutsuki capable of inheriting a dojutsu. The reason behind this was never quite explained, although it was speculated that they had more genetic variation exposed to them as opposed to the other descendants. As a result, They have seen a wide variety of these dojutsu appear on their brethren to a point where they took these mutations as a normal thing. These dojutsu included the Chinoike clan's Ketsuryugan, a dojutsu with a red, dark crimson pupil, and vertical white slit in the middle that allows the wielder to cast very powerful genjutsu and manipulate blood. In particular the Iron in Blood, the Rinnegan, one of the so-called Great Three dojutsu. A purple, three-ringed, black pupil eye capable of repelling and attracting objects to the wielder. Summoning animals outside the corporeal plane, sealing beings by burying them in a gravitational cluster of rock with the epicenter created from thin air. Leaping into and through created portals and recalling souls from the afterlife. Reviving the bodies they inhabited at the cost of the wielder's life energy. And the Jogan, or the pure eye, which consists of a black sclera and an azure blue pupil, is not known of due to its rare occurrence but is capable of transporting the wielder from one world to the other, similar to the Rinnegan, in what is called Jikuken, space-time ninjutsu, allowing the wielder to get an X-ray vision of their opponent's tenketsu points, like the Byakugan, and is believed to be the progenitor of the three great dojutsu, along with the Rinne Sharingan. With a clan as ridiculous as this in terms of overwhelming potential and power, many from other clans would try to kidnap them for their name and exploit them in the hopes that they or their children become powerful, but they would fail completely for multiple reasons. With an island surrounded by whirlpools capable of sinking the toughest ships ever created, Uzu no Kuni was impenetrable. If that was not enough, they had a plethora of seals that covered the whole island in every direction, from a height of 10,000 meters above sea level to 5,000 meters below sea level. These seals were part of a shinobi art named Fuinjutsu, the very same one that used when Hagoromo and Hamura fought against their mother, Kagaya. It is this very art that the rest of the elemental nations hated and feared the Uzumaki for. Add in their life force that could make a deity jealous with envy and intellectual prowess, and you would have one of, if not the most powerful and menacing clan to ever grace the elemental nations. Both the Hyuga and Uzumaki were in contact with each other and their distant Otsutsuki brethren as the millennia passed and were strictly told not to interfere in the wars, for something despicable would happen if they did. The Uzumaki, led by Ashina, questioned the decision and decided to at least help one clan they were particularly close to, the Senju, the clan with 1,000 skills. As the warring clans era drew to a close, Uzumaki Ashina conducted the first unification summit between the Uchiha and Senju, after the latter forced the former to surrender due to the heavy casualties inflicted on them, giving rise to the very first Hidden Village, a coalition of clans unified by Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama. Signed and sealed, with Ashina as witness, Konohagakure no Sato was born. The village then got an alliance with Uzu no Kuni that same year. Of course, such an alliance was opposed by citizens of Uzushio, as they saw these former enemies as untrustworthy clans to them and would rather see them dead than alive, so Ashina proposed for the clan to secure several small islands around Uzu no Kuni, inhabit them, secure them and throw the world off, making sure that people believe that Uzushio is the only place they would inhabit in the event that they are attacked. An evacuation plan spanning years to execute without a hitch, women and children, along with the elderly were taken to these islands and integrated, without any leak of information whatsoever. 3 of Ashina's direct relatives and bloodline went to at least one of the islands, so as to keep some kind of hierarchy going. In Uzushio, Ashina, his wife Sayuri, his eldest daughter Mito, his eldest son, Kojiro and his youngest son Tobio were among the very few inhabitants left, totaling up to 5,000 citizens of Uzushio. That meant that, out of 12,000 citizens, less than half of the population stayed, considering themselves martyrs already. The rest of them moved to 3 smaller islands. 2 on the eastern side of Mizu no Kuni and 1 on the northern side of Mizu no Kuni. Overall, 2,000 citizens per island was the tally. The 1,000 that was left decided to be spies for the clan and helped their leader Ashina with keeping tabs on the ever-growing hidden villages that used the same structure that their leader helped to engineer. Most of them created bases in Konohagakure and the newly created Sunagakure no Sato in Kase no Kuni. Some spread to Iwagakure in Tsuchi no Kuni as merchanseling fish imported from Uzushio. Some entered into Kumogakure no Sato. As the years passed, the hidden villages grew hostile towards each other but did no prefer to show it due to the presence of the Shidaime Hokage, Senju Hashirama, a peace-loving beast of godly proportion. At least, to them. The Hokage was well versed in all shinobi arts, preferring to shine in ninjutsu. With all 5 nature transformations at his disposal, he is especially lethal in his Kekkei Genkei, a powerful combination of Doden and Suiden synergized with Yang chakra to create Mokuden wood release. With it, he could create vast forests, conjure up mythical creatures made of wood and even put mythical beasts under his control by binding them and channeling as much Yang chakra as possible to tame them. The first man in history to tame them, without using a dojutsu, he was considered the god of shinobi, and his strength spoke volumes. Question is, who in their right mind would mess with him? With that fear instilled in the hidden villages representing the elemental nations, the first Hokage Kaden was called by the god of shinobi. Now, these village leaders, also called Kage, were here under the basis of highlighting their grievances, firstly, by demanding their terms and conditions for accepting an equal share of power in the form of biju. These biju are chakra constructs shaped in the form of animalistic beasts with a number of tails attained to them. Overall, there are 9 of them, with tails that signify their hierarchy of strength, from 1 to 9. Their origin got lost to man as time went on. The few clans that had a faint clue about them were the Senju and Uchiha, with few documents referencing them. The Uzumaki and Hyuga clan knew everything about them but would not spread such information for obvious reasons. As the bickering started and ended, the other leaders had no choice but to accept the biju split, with Konoha keeping the Kyubi no Kitsune and Kiri being given the Sanbi turtle and Rokubi slug. Kumo received the Nibi no Nekomata and Hachibi no Ushioni. Iwa received Yonbi the sage monkey and Gobi, a horse-like beast. Sina received the Aikibi no Tanuki, also known to the public as the Shukaku. As all these hidden villages agreed on the distribution of the biju, it left one to negotiate with. One eager village, Takigakure no Sato, decided to cash in on the deal. With that, they were in possession of the Nanabi. You would think that, with all these efforts that Hashirama took to preserve peace, people would just sit down with all their might to relish in, and not start wars. He learned that the world was not so naive as to accept handouts and smile about it. The other great hidden villages took this as a major insult to their pride as shinobi. On top of that, tensions were rising in his own village. With the loss of his longtime best friend Uchiha Madara due to a one-man rebellion that resulted in a historic fight between him and Hashirama, the clan was already ostracized, to a point where their whole estate was taken to the outskirts of the village. It could be argued that the clan was actually being accommodated with the formation of the Konoha police force, as it was comprised of only Uchiha clan members. The police force, one of Hashirama's younger brother's ideas, was excellent and was a great training institution for the clan. The problem with it was that it gave the rest of the village a chance to ridicule the clan instead of investing pride in the clan. The result was a growing need to gain more power, be it through politics or brute strength, planting the seed for a rebellion. With Tobirama next in line to become Hokage, he figured that he would have to give the hat over to him because the mental toll he had was heavy. Add to the fact that his wife was a target for assassination because of who she is and who she is married to, really did give him many wrinkles. God of Shinobi be damned. His eldest son, Idama, named in honor of his second younger brother, brought his expecting, for the second time, wife and 3-year-old daughter Tsunade to the main Senju house in the complex, near Senju Park in the village, for a visit. He was grateful for the visit, as he was playing with his oldest grandchild, and playing, it is implied that they were gambling. Hashirama quickly realized that Tsunade was a terrible gambler, much like he was. That, in itself, is alarmingly dangerous. Looking away at the bundle of joy for a minute, he noticed Idama looking at him, as if he was worried about something. He sighed. Being from a family of sensory-type ninja, you could never lie to each other about anything. Well, maybe you could, but you never know if you could get away with it. Idama sensed the unease of his father and asked his wife to wait for him in the living room. He gave his pops a stare that said, "Let's go to your study." With that, they left. "Tu-chan, have you told anyone about your illness?" asked Idama. Hashirama just looked down at the ground, silent. This carried on for a minute or so until, "How the hell am I supposed to stay as the Hokage if I have a virus that keeps eating at my chakra? How will I tell your mother? Oh hey love, I'm dying in a few months and you need to be strong for the family." You already get the fact that she's a Jinchuriki and they hate bad news, especially if it's this catastrophic. I wish I could see my grandchildren grow up into fine shinobi, especially Nawaki. Kami knows how much I already love that grandson of mine. How could I even forget Tobarama? He's going to bite my head off with how I always keep everything to myself until he helps me deal with it, only to see him wither away like a dried up flower. Tell me, what about Azami, your brother? I've never been this low in my life. This is even worse than killing my best friend. It's not even death that I'm scared of. I'm just thinking about everything after. The whole world is resting on my death. That's what I'm most afraid of. He whispered, with tears wetting his face. Idama felt like his heart got stabbed by a stray kunai. He had never seen his dad in such a vulnerable position as he was showing right now. He thought to himself, how does a man who went through a clan war, lost most of his clansmen including Kawarama and Idama, the uncle he was named after, and had to kill his best friend to protect a dream they shared and realized together, get to think that his death is the scariest thing of all? Idama's eyes widened as he realized something. His father was not crying about his own early demise. He was not even talking about giving up everything because of his is what he got from his father. The gears of war would turn once he left this world. Deep down, he knew that everyone except a select few were not gearing up for any show of hostility from any other hidden village, and the reason was simple. They got complacent in their peace that they never thought about a Konoha without Hashirama, ever. To the villagers, he was everything. Their friend, their father, mother, it could even be taken a bit further and it could be said that he was their Kami-sama. All hail the shinobi no Kami, they said. Even though Hashirama himself preached on leaving everything to the next generation, he only got to groom just 3 people to lead the future, not counting his sons. Sarutobi Hiruzen, a rascal with innate potential to be the next shinobi no Kami, already garnering fame with the moniker, the Professor, for his vast knowledge and expert execution of jutsu from the 5 nature transformations to the non-elemental jutsu shinobi, some of which he improved to unimaginable degrees. Add to the fact that he's just 18. Mitokado Homura, a very scrawny, brown-haired, glasses-wearing young teenager whose only redeeming ability would be his attention to detail. A typical Chunin-level ninja. Udatain Kaharu, your average kunoichi. Hates weak men and apparently vibes with Hiruzen, despite having only 3 years in each other's presence. Too bad Saru is an addict for looking underneath the underneath. He really hoped his brother would survive the impending war he would indirectly start. They both knew from experience that Konoha did not need to fight a war. To him, the warring clans era was more than his fair share of war. With that being said, please Tu-chan, at least tell them what to expect. Everyone will have to understand. I will have to understand that there's a world after you. It's a father's duty to die before their own children. You've already done enough for the village. For the world, even. Just take a rest, okay? Ka-chan and the others will understand. Let's go, Idama said. For some reason, Hashirama felt more lightheaded than usual. As he approached his bedroom door, he felt uneasy. The minute Idama opened the door, he saw a slight he didn't want to saw a man who was not a senju. How did he know? This is not to say he didn't know his own clansmen. With a preoccupied mind that belongs to the most powerful man in the elemental nations, anything is possible. Even mistaking your family for an enemy. The man in question was wearing a takigakurhitai on his forehead. His face was covered with a balaclava-like mask, which one would believe, was to hide his identity. Here's the problem. He knew who he was. He even had the audacity to sit on his bed, while waiting for some sort of response. More than that, he saw red because of one frightening detail. His daughter-in-law and little Tsunade were being cuddled to sleep by this man. Hashirama Dono, what a nice surprise. Let's talk. I don't know if you know me, but I'm hoping to discuss the terms of your passing with you. Nice family you have here. Wonder how your son would feel about their disappearance. Oh well, I'm here to claim my cash order here and leave. Is that good to you? An eerily deep bass voice spoke. The whole house started to shake, almost like an earthquake. Idama glared daggers at the man. Hashirama was about to pounce on the man when he angrily asked. What the hell is Takigakur no Kakuzu doing in my house? On that signal, the now named Kakuzu performed a seal-less shunshin as he ran out of the very window he had entered. The father-son duo followed the Taki mercenary in hot pursuit. Hashirama had to resort to his Shikatsu Woods trained Sennin mode to prevent any more internal damage to his system. This brand of arts is called Senjutsu, the ability to use your body as a rechargeable battery as far as absorbing Shizen Energy, nature energy, is concerned. Basically, you channel this energy to amplify your physical and innate senses to abnormal degrees. In addition to increasing the durability of your first known human practitioner of Senjutsu was Otsutsuki Hagoromo, gaining the skill from the Toad Sage Gamamaru's home world, Myoboku-zan. Some practitioners get their Senjutsu training from Ruchi-do, under the tutelage of the Hokage Sennin, the Snake Sage. All these Senjutsu methods are lethal. Theoretically speaking, one could learn the various styles of these Senjutsu training areas due to the fact that nature energy is the common energy source used, as they are no different from the other. The problem would come when the kata will have to be executed. Certain kata are used in conjunction with their respective Sennin mode practices, and as a result, it is not known whether the level of nature energy a wielder is accustomed to can be used to perform kata of another type Sennin mode, hence it has not been tested. As Hashirama was chasing Kakuzu, he noticed something peculiar about his running patterns. Instead of seemingly baiting them to a secluded area, he headed off to a place he knew was crowded. If what he was thinking was correct, then the one place he head off to is Senju Park. A subtle tech could be heard from the Senju head as he formed 10 Moku Bunshin, prompting Itama to create his set of 10 Kage Bunshin with 5 heading to the park, planning to form a 1-kilometer radius around it. To beat a seasoned mercenary, be more stealthy than you can think. Itama applied this chicken in hiding approach on multiple occasions, and it won because it was never expected. Hashirama told 5 of his Bunshin to layer the radius Itama up and the other 5 to contact his best subordinates, Uchiha Kagami, Shimura Danzo, Sarutobi Sasuke, Sarutobi Hiruzen, and a distant relative. Key to this plan of his, Uzumaki Satori. Satori had the privilege of growing up in the Senju household and was trained by his first cousin Hashirama, who found out about his Eye of Kagura. He could pinpoint an opponent's exact location, recklessly throw himself in the enemy's lines of attack, acting like a drunk to distract them, and guess where your next line would be, all before they even think of retaliating. The result in this case was Kakuzu being put on the spot before thinking of going to a public spot. Immediately after Hashirama sent the clones, the 5 were told to intercept the assassin, with help from Satori and his guesswork. With 5 actual opponents and 5 clones of the Shinobi no Kami facing him, he would be hard-pressed to do something against them. As soon as the original Hashirama came, he grinned. Time for some quick swipes. With one fluid motion, he slashed at Satori with a sweetened katana conjured up from thin air, without seals. One would think that Kakuzu was as powerful with sweetened jutsu just like Senju Tobarama, but he knew he couldn't afford to lie about such things. After all, he couldn't create an ocean from thin air. Not only did he not have the chakra control for it, he was not a chakra monster. Still, he prided himself in his technique and had a sense of professionalism that stemmed from his love of the Ryo. Everything was just all about the money for him and nothing mattered. Except jutsu and Ryo. Speaking of jutsu, Satori countered Kakuzu with a 2-stage kawarimi from his position to Kakuzu's water sword, punching him in the gut before changing his position from Kakuzu to a clone of Hashirama's, which proceeded to decimate him horribly. Using a taijutsu variation he taught the Might family, the Goken, he kicked Kakuzu high enough for start a mid-air barrage of kicks and feints, that not only threw Kakuzu off for a loop but made him realize that he was actually being used like a training dummy used for taijutsu training. This was useless, being fed lies by the very village you were supposed to die for was one thing. Agreeing with such lies is another. But going to a great hidden village, a progenitor of hidden villages at that, attacking its leader on the basis that he was rumored to be ill and was an easy target is one type of fuckery you need to get your screws checked for. This was a Kage, the most powerful Kage of his generation. A man who the Biju hailed as the ultimate 5-0. Yes, the man who captured 8 of the Biju and subdued them by himself, battled a Biju-level shinobi along with the Kyuubi no Kitsune and came out on top by defeating said shinobi and sealing said Biju in his wife, gaining control over the Biju and granting his village the ultimate bargaining chip. The man could be in a coma and still wipe the floor with him. He would definitely kill the elders back at Taki and steal the Jongu or whatever his late friend said black lump of threads was. He was sure of it. Right now, he had to survive. Which was not looking good at the moment. You could spot Hiruzen taking notes on a scroll like a powerless boy with a tendency of saying he wants to be a hero. Oyaji, is Hashirama sensei going to win with ninjutsu or with that funny Goken style of his? I only heard about it from my former classmate Hirai. Hiruzen asked. Sarutobi Sasuke took that as his cue to place a flimsy-looking cigarette on his mouth, snap his fingers and create a small fire jutsu to light it. The smell of tobacco would have forced him to concentrate on the fight, but this was more of a simulation that Chunin would have to take in the event that they were drugged or poisoned. Nevertheless, whatever was burning was not tobacco. Son, it's Goken. Never take it for granted, you never know if you might need to master it like all these other techniques you stole. Oyaji, stop being a bully. I didn't steal them. I asked for permission from the relevant people. Hiruzen admonished. Oh, and where is the paperwork? Funny coming from someone who hates writing reports but has the time to read hentai and giggle like a fangirl. Ah, Soragakur no Sato is afoot. Nice stuff, retorted and concluded Sasuke, with a nice puff of weed. With a sick burn to heal, Hiruzen could mumble, "Get you next time, old geezer," so as to not be heard. What if Bawako was here? She would beat his pervy butt all the way to Konoha Day, if she heard his dad sprout such impurities. A shutter was shut down before it came to the surface. Kagami couldn't help but laugh at the inner turmoil of his first non-Uchiha friend. He knew they were friends, but Hiruzen would never admit it. Not with how he made Hiruzen spend his first date with Bawako without preparing for it. Not that he would have been ready for it. Danzo was just asking himself if he could reach the same stage as his longtime friend. He only knew a substantial amount of Fudan ninjutsu and other non-elemental ninjutsu, but beyond that, he was like any other chunin. Nevertheless, he waited for his call to action when they had to apprehend the assassin. If only such a time could come. Kakuzu was close to passing out and he knew that if he blundered, he would be captured. With some last-minute thinking, he threw a flash bomb, pepper bomb and 2 vials of potent poison on the ground, which, upon explosion, covered a wide area. This allowed Kakuzu to run, oh so desperately, for his life, like a coward. And he never looked back. Ever. Curse Konoha. Never force yourself to do a suicide mission. Meanwhile, at the scene of the fight, 2 things happened. Everyone got sidetracked by the bombs and poison vials and Hashirama fainted. Danzo was the first to notice and flared his chakra in intervals to alert the Iryo Nin and Ansatsu Senjutsu Tokushu Butai Black Ops created and trained by Tobarama Sensei. 3 seconds later, a platoon of 5 Anbu Black Ops and 2 Iryo Nin shunshin to the scene, gave everyone a pill containing a liquid ball perceived as an antidote corrosive to the poison, as described by the multiple chakra flares that it was only aimed at stopping mobility. Worryingly, their leader took the full brunt of the cowardly escape plot and was knocked out. In the same time it took the platoon to reach the scene, they left for the Konoha hospital. What would happen to Hashirama? Would he survive this attack? Or would this start the first great ninja war? It has been months since Senju Hashirama was brought to Konoha Hospital. To be precise, it has been 6 months, 3 weeks and 2 days ago, if the nurse doing the checkup is paying attention. 17-year-old Sarutobi Bawako was on her shift at the hospital to guard and nurse the Shidaime Hokage back to health. This was a very difficult and huge job. One mistake would guarantee an execution on the spot, no matter how much a mistake it was. With that in mind, she started her daily routine. She checked manually if the vital signs were present. She drew on his file. Severe low blood pressure. Slowed heartbeat and slight loss of complexion. With every kanji drawn, Bawako had to briefly stop before shaking. Not because of the underlined threat of ending her life. No, her reason was painfully obvious. Lying on that bed, with all those IVs connected to him, was the greatest medic in the elemental nations. The only combat medic capable of putting the world on its knees. Lying in a coma, was the shinobi no kami. Honestly, you would not know what was more heartbreaking. The fact that your greatest role model was reduced to a coma and could be brain dead, or the fact that the one person who could heal almost anyone using just his yang chakra alone, was the one person everyone was struggling to save. Nonetheless, Konoha had to move on. After calling everyone to the Senju complex, Itama held a meeting with his clansmen with the Hokage-elect Tobirama present. Apparently, Tobirama was told that this was a very important meeting to attend, regardless of his new position. Guess he couldn't keep himself busy with work. Dreary, with bags under his eyes and a dry trail of tears on his face, he sat down in a seiza position, facing his clansmen. Hoping not to crack under pressure, he assumed a neutral face. Itama started the meeting. Thank you for gathering here today, brethren. Knowing how much we have to contribute to the village given the drastic changes in the village, I appreciate the effort it took to come here and hear my views on the current state of affairs. Now, what I'm going to mention is probably the toughest thing I can say as it not affects me personally, but it's definitely going to affect the whole world. At that last statement, the Senju narrowed their eyes and with one simultaneous move, they assumed a seiza position. They did not like where this was supposed to go. Itama simply stated. We are already in a world that has left Senju Hashirama behind. They bowed their heads in anguish. Clearly, they did not expect their warring clan leader to live forever now, did they? Certainly, they were sure that the next generation could defend Konoha like he did, right? Who were they kidding? Itama continued, it had come to 2chan's attention that our village has not been able to refine its protectors. This, he said, was mainly due to the fact that he himself cast a shadow on Konoha. He became Hokage. That's true. But he put the spotlight on him. He admitted that he did a lot of things for the village that were received as disrespectful. I'm sure Hokage-sama can recall that Hokage Kaden you attended while I was little. The core subject was the distribution of power between the great hidden villages. Particularly the Biju that were captured. Here's where the troublesome part in all of this comes in. The various villages reluctantly accepted the Biju because the man distributing them was feared. It is human nature to retaliate against something that you fear because you feel that this fear is unnecessary to you. It propels you to be weak. Why should you keep such a feeling in your system? The Senju were confused. Why would the cage retaliate due to simple fear? If anything, they would be overjoyed for the share of the spoils Hashirama-sama gave them, unless. Being the shrewd person he was, Tobirama quickly deduced what his nephew was going to say. The ninja world is cutthroat. Much like Shinomori, it is a jungle with the most resourceful and the strongest survive. Anything goes. Now, tell me, if you're the strongest person alive, pitted against a pack of wolves that, individually, you can beat to a pulp, what's the very first thing they would do to you? Murmurs arose in the complex. What was Itama on about? It's simple. Form a chain of attack with seemingly one side, while the leader of the pack attacks another side, for an efficient spread of distance. The wolves, in this case, are the very same sheep we rescued from the wolves called Unrest. Konoha is going to war. With that, Itama left the complex, not before he put this thought into their heads. Konoha is going to war because we betrayed our greatest hero. As he left, silence brewed over the complex until they snapped. Itama was right. Konoha enjoyed their peace and lazily bathed in it, instead of protecting the very reason why such peace came to exist. That same afternoon, Bawako was about to leave Hashirama-sama's when his heartbeat just stopped. Ringing the emergency bell, she called every doctor on her floor to try and resuscitate him because she didn't trust her hands anymore. Chaos in the hospital room ensued. A Hyuga Iryo Nin put a palm on the former Hokage's chest and performed a chakra pulse jump start, with no improvement. She tried, multiple times, over and over again, but there was no response. All the others tried CPR, but they cried as they looked at the end result. One of the Iryo Nin was trembling, white cloth in her hands and all. She approached her former Hokage and shakingly placed that same cloth on his head, covering it. Tears fell on the Iryo Nin's faces and it was apparent as to why this happened. The 14th generation clan leader of the Senju, Shidaime Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato, Konoha Hospital's founder and chief Iryo Nin, and Nadaime Shinobi no Kami, Senju Hashirama has joined the departed. With this, Hashirama has started the first great ninja war.